Hey everybody, this is Chris DeMatteo, the Law Talking Guy, and tonight I'm joined with one of my closest friends, who's also a Law Talking Guy, Matt Carney.
Hi.
Hey, Matt.
Hey.
Okay, Matt and I actually went to high school together, which was a while ago. We never practiced together, but we did serve on the same mock trial team. So in a way, we have tried.
We
some
pretended
cases
to
together.
practice.
Yeah, they just weren't real. And that is perfectly in line with what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about fictional lawyers, movie and TV lawyers. Legal fiction is a term that's used a lot, and this is actually as fictional as it gets. So today we're going to discuss some of the big hitters in on-screen law. We're narrowing it to trial attorneys, specifically criminal trial attorneys. So we will not be talking about, for instance, Frank Galvin of The Verdict, played by Paul Newman. We're not going to do, and they have to be completely fictional. We're not going to talk about Jan Schlickman from Civil Action because he's actually real. So we were talking about purely fictional characters. So we've watched a lot of movies about lawyers, and just going to get into it. So you can go first, Matt. Which movie lawyer would you hire if you needed to win a trial? If you were rightfully or wrongfully accused of a crime, most likely murder, because it's always murder.
Right, of course.
Who would you want to represent?
It's nothing small. And it's like, yeah, because it's murder, because it's not like a white collar thing, because there are no white collar lawyers who come out of these kind of movies. It's always like, murder guys. I feel like if I were like arrested or something like that, I feel like From A Time to Kill, Jake Brigance.
That is actually my choice as well.
And here's why. There's a couple reasons why. Not because he's a great lawyer. I don't know if he is or not. I feel like he'd be. But I feel like fast forward to after the movie happens. He's won this big national thing. He's going to be like a big deal celebrity lawyer at that point, right? So when you hire him, you're going to, like, it's going to be very serious. You're going to, get people's attention. It's going to be, I'm prepared to fight. And maybe that gets the prosecutor's attention. I'm not a criminal lawyer myself, so I don't really, necessarily know how those dynamics work. But I feel like not only is he good, only though, I would only hire him if he still had, and I forget Sandra Bullock's character's name.
Is it
only if she's still working for him?
Rourke is her last
name. She's like
name.
The brains of the operation. Yeah. So like she was like the brains of the operation, and he's just like the pretty face, and the pretty extremely sweaty face, because every character in a John Grisham movie is constantly and extremely perspiring, no matter the time of day, no matter the time of year. They're always just like coming out of the shower. So I feel like he's, as long as he's still with Rourke.
Yeah. So I'll tell you why I like Brigance. Because of, so here's the thing. For those of you who haven't watched movies about trials, the good guy, the defendant, almost always wins. There aren't many cases, and there are some, but there are not many. Usually it's the hero defense lawyer who wins the case. But a lot of times that's an innocent person. A Time to Kill, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this 1996 movie or 1993 movie or read the novel, we're going to spoil it for you, but you should go see it. Read the book and see the movie. They're both good. So that's what's good. What's great about that. This is one where we know who did it. Honestly, I forgot the character in the book's name, the defendant, but I know he was played by Samuel L. Jackson in the movie.
Yep.
So we'll just refer to him as Samuel L. Jackson. So Samuel L. Jackson was a black man who shot and killed two white guys in broad daylight in the South.
He confessed to it on the stand.
Right. In the South. I think that they had an all-white jury. And he still won. So and I know there was a temporary insanity defense, but still, he took an affirmative defense. So this isn't a lot of lawyers in these movies who often win because of some sort of surprise ending. They catch the real guy, that sort of thing. But no, they had the real guy. But Jake Brigance and Rourke came up with a real defense. It probably wouldn't work in real life,
No, because their expert was like,
but
was their
in
expert
their
an
world,
alcoholic?
it did. Huh?
Wasn't their expert like an alcoholic or something like that?
Right,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
They have an ethics problem that just gets trotted out in cross-examination. And it's like, oh, by the way, why are you even practicing medicine right now? But you're our key witness, so good luck.
So, I mean, the practice of law is more than just theatrics, it's preparation.
Mm-hmm.
I know in the book, their preparation becomes hanging out at the bar and some strange stuff like that, dealing with the Klan, which I'm sure that comes up in Mississippi all the time. But they actually put on a real defense. They get an expert, even though he was a drunk. And they actually made legal arguments. So yeah, he is my pick. And by the way, I mean, since we're dealing with movie lawyers, we'd be hiring a lawyer who looks and sounds like Matthew McConaughey. I mean, without being the actual Matthew McConaughey. So it'd be someone who actually
keep his shirt on in the courtroom.
Yeah, he wouldn't be naked playing the drums or something. He'll be, sharp-looking, nice-sounding defense attorney. So yeah, Jake Brugance.
And I feel like a lot of these trial movies, which you're going to get into, I'm sure, but like, I feel like a lot of them would benefit from like a sequel to say, okay, this guy just won the case of his life, oftentimes in the spotlight. Doesn't he get scooped up by like some giant firm and move to New York and get a house in Westchester and like, drive a BMW now? Or does he become like, in reality, I actually don't think Jake Brugance is available to be hired in sort of the Time to Kill 2, because I feel like he's the guy who goes and works for like a nonprofit or a pro bono practice or something like that. Like he became a true believer through that movie. Whereas someone else who I'm sure we'll talk about, like Daniel Kaffee from A Time to Kill, he is going straight to Wall Street. He is going to right to a big white shoe firm, and he's on board for that.
Yeah, I think that I would think that Brugance would be more like he'd almost be like a Morris Dees type of person. He would start, a civil rights type, or he'd he'd stay in the South, and he'd take on high profile cases defending people like his former client.
Right. Yeah, I think it's like a Grisham thing, like his lawyers are all true believers, It's actually sort of like, to take it off for just a second, my favorite Grisham book was The Runaway Jury, because no one's really like the good guy, kind of. And it's actually got a twist. Like, you watch Time to Kill, it's 20 years old, so I'm not spoiling it for anyone, but the defendant gets off after a very moving and rousing closing argument, where in the middle of it, you're like, yeah, this guy's getting off. But like in A Runaway Jury, you're not entirely sure it's going to happen. But back to the point is that I feel like Grisham's lawyers are oftentimes, straight shooters. They're driven by what's right and the cause, and they're not someone who's going to go and sell out or do something like that. Whereas I think some other lawyers in other movies that we'll discuss or TV shows will be right out that door.
Yeah.
Getting that
back. You mentioned Daniel Kaffee. Might as well talk about him. Daniel Kaffee, famously played by Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men, is a naval JAG officer. So he's a defense attorney representing Marines in accused of committing a crime on a naval base.
Also did it. That's the other thing. They did it. They admitted to doing it. They did it. They're cold. They're done. And that's the other similarity too, is that he's got this case that's impossible, and he still pulls the rabbit out of his hat.
Right. So was A Time to Kill, A Few Good Men's a great movie for a lot of reasons. And it still has again, spoiler alert, it still has kind of a throwback type ending, the way Perry Mason and those old shows did, where they get somebody else to admit it on the stand, which almost never happens. It only seems to happen in movies like that. And again, this was a case where they did it, but actually they kind of nulled it up. They were basically going for almost like jury nullification,
Yeah,
that.
basically,
I
yeah.
think,
I mean,
I think in terms of liability, his clients and Jack Nicholson would be liable for the murder.
well, and they don't get off entirely.
No,
They get
they're
discharged.
convicted of conduct unbecoming of a Marine. So, right.
Right, and I think they both get discharged.
They do, right, dishonorably.
Yeah.
So again, in terms of his trial skills, the reason why I would probably hold off on hiring Kaffee is so that's a good movie in terms of a legal team. I might hire Kevin Pollak's character.
I would hire Kevin Pollak and Demi Moore before I hired Daniel Kaffee.
Kevin Pollak had my favorite line in the movie, and which is a big compliment because there are a lot of great lines in that movie.
Oh yeah.
My favorite line is when Kevin Pollak says, "That's the difference between paper law and trial law." So when I think that's shortly after Demi Moore's character does the "I strenuously object."
Yeah.
Which I've seen in real life. I had somebody in one of my trials do that objection. I strenuously object, and the judge just said, "All right, I strenuously overruled. Move on."
That's just some old timer judge who's been waiting to do that for like 15 years. He's like, I finally get a chance.
Yeah, but right. I mean, there is a difference between law and trial law. I mean, trial law, there's certain legal things that you might.
It's more instinctual. Yeah.
So
I think the other interesting. I mean, that movie is like, especially like the ending and everything. It's an Aaron Sorkin movie, and it's very like Capra-esque kind of thing. And like Aaron Sorkin would have been much better suited to be a writer in like the 1960s, if for no other reason than he likes his arcs. He likes his, white hats and black hats and all that. Like from the moment you see Jack Nicholson, you're like, yes, he is a bad guy. He is the bad guy. I don't care. Like Kiefer Sutherland plays such a bad guy in that movie, and he's a bad guy. And like that's just how Aaron Sorkin plays. And I actually think I don't think there are any other lawyers we're going to talk about that are Sorkin lawyers other than Daniel Kaffee, but like
I don't think so.
Because I think in a lot of his movies, at least, the lawyers are sort of secondary characters, but he writes lawyers so well. I mean, you watch Social Network, or the Social Network. It's a framing story in a deposition, and depositions are boring, and he makes them interesting. And yes, they're not realistic depositions, but even still, it makes them interesting. And I think, when he did The West Wing, when he did all the stuff he does lawyers really well. So I think it's not surprising that he did a really interesting set of lawyers, because you had not just the trial team on the defense, but Kevin Bacon was also, I think, really good. And Kevin Bacon's, after that movie happened, is like a colonel somewhere, and he's a lifer. But like he's
still not good at softball, but he was a good prosecutor. my issue with Kaffee, I guess it depends on. Remember, at the beginning of the movie, they gave the case to Kaffee because he was a known plea bargainer. He was a read and plead kind of roll cases. So his reputation really wasn't that great.
No.
He won this one trial, but he did it. So there might be articles about this. I thought of this take just a little while ago. Tom Cruise played Maverick in Top Gun. He's very talented but undisciplined fighter pilot living in the shadow of his deceased father. Is he not playing the same character, the same type of character in a few minutes? And Daniel Kaffee,
he's playing a sliding door.
Yeah, I mean, like, isn't Daniel Kaffee the Pete Maverick Mitchell as a lawyer? He has the famous father living in his shadow. Has questionable judgment, and then wins by taking a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, they even say that his father never would have done that. Not many lawyers would have done that. That violates all sorts of trial strategy.
I mean, they would have taken the deal that Kevin Bacon offers him outside the gym.
Which is a good deal, by the way.
Yeah, it was a great deal. Why didn't he take that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And you're absolutely right. It's an interesting point that, like, Tom Cruise plays the same guy multiple times.
I mean, that's just Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Again, Kaffee, a very talented lawyer. But the thing is, do you know which Kaffee's going to show up for your trial?
Oh, yeah.
And you just don't.
And I also think, like, again, let's fast forward to say 15 years. Kaffee 15 years after the fact, he's not working real hard. He's probably not putting in the same time. he's probably doing the grip and grin circuit and number 5 because he doesn't feel like he's got a softball game to get to. I feel like that's where he's at.
Yeah. So that's Daniel Kaffee. Should probably go for somebody that I wouldn't hire in the universe of his movie, but would consider hiring him later. That's
okay.
Vincent LaGuardia Gambini. Okay? So again, my cousin Vinny is definitely in the pantheon of courtroom movies.
Yeah.
And Vinny Gambini, on paper, this is a guy that has never tried a case, not even a criminal attorney. He's actually a PI attorney. New York.
Sure. Yeah.
So why would I wouldn't hire a PI attorney that's never tried a case that had to take the bar 6 times.
It was 6. I thought it was more than 6.
Yeah, I think they say a third time's a charm. And he says, "Nah, for me."
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So, on paper, not somebody I'd hire.
No.
But he definitely demonstrated a lot of ability. I mean, there aren't a whole lot of things that make somebody a natural trial lawyer. But Vinny actually had some of those. He was somebody that was very quick on his feet. He was able to learn on the fly. He went from, he tried a case in hostile territory.
Yep.
He's, again, a New Yorker in Alabama. Facing, again, and the prosecutor was a good lawyer. I mean, this wasn't a buffoon. And he also, he knew how to use his resources in terms of his expert witness.
Yeah.
Like his cross-examinations were actually really good. And but somebody shouldn't be learning how to try a case during the trial. You should
no
know a little better. But
we're making the kind of sartorial choices he made throughout.
Yeah. So I would say.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'd say Vinny Gambini, definitely an up-and-comer. Somebody that showed that he can try and win a case. Granted, he still relied on, it turned out that his clients were innocent and they caught the real guy, that sort of thing. So even if he had lost that trial, there's a good chance they would have been able to have it reversed or vacated on a post-conviction type thing. But we're not going to do that.
Vinny Gambini, appellate lawyer.
There is actually one movie. It was I saw it years ago. I don't know what streaming platform it was on. It was called. There was a show on the 70s called Petrocelli about an Italian American lawyer from Boston who moves out west. Yeah, I know this seems like my show, right? And he moved out west. I took a class in law school, my last year of law school, law and pop culture. Probably the best class I ever took.
That is such a spring semester, third year of law school.
Oh yeah,
class. Like
that's phenomenal.
Law and let's watch some movies. Let's turn down the lights and watch some movies. So,
so my professor told me about
afternoon.
Yes, my professor told us about Petrocelli. He was this kind of existential character. He was a quirky guy from Boston who moves out to, I think, somewhere in the Southwest. It's a fish out of water type thing. And I told my dad, I said, "Oh yeah, I used to watch Petrocelli." So yeah, of course my dad liked the show about the Italian American lawyer.
Of course, yeah.
In New England. But there turned out there was a movie about it. The movie probably preceded the show. And in the movie, he actually loses the trial. And you're thinking, what the hell?
Really?
But then he wins the appeal and it gets remanded. So it's
just a bored lawyer writing that screenplay. Like, I'll show them.
So it's a legal movie that it's both a courtroom thriller and an appellate thriller with two trials.
Two words often found next to each other. Appellate thriller.
So that's Petrocelli. But you don't see a whole lot of
no.
And there are movies about convictions and appeals, but they're usually focused on that.
Like The Hurricane is a good one. Like I don't even remember who plays the lawyer in that movie because who cares? Yeah. But yeah, I feel like with Vinny Gambini, there's a trend starting here. Like I would consider hiring him if Marissa Tomei was also involved, because there's a brains of the operation here, and it's not necessarily Vinny. And I feel like him in the future is like he goes back to New York and he's like shunned by the legal establishment. Like Daniel Kaffee, the son of a former famous attorney general, decorated Navy JAG, he is welcomed by the legal firmament. Vinny Gambini, I don't care how many cases he wins in Alabama, he is not getting a seat at the big table. And I feel like you'd find him eking out something, grinding and trying cases, but I feel like he'd be successful at it too.
I think so. I think I think Vinny, I think he'd be back in Brooklyn. He'd probably have a billboard on the Long Island Expressway.
Maybe not current Brooklyn, maybe like Brooklyn in the 90s, and then he moved to Staten Island.
Yeah, that's true. Would I hire Vinny for a criminal case? I'd consider it. I'd probably definitely hire him for a PI case. I think Vinny would go back to PI, and he'd be pulling in the $1 million.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he would do. He wouldn't stay criminal because that's not. Is this Vinny? Like, come on. He would be like, there's no juice in the criminal side. That's really hard. I'm just gonna do PI, and he would be on TV all the time. You could not turn on a Mets game, not a Yankees game, Mets game, without seeing a Vinny Gambini ad on SNY.
Yeah. So that's actually another interesting trope. You have Marissa Tomei. So, law is collaborative. Like, although a lot of movies have the lone wolf defense attorney, in real life, lawyers rely heavily on investigators, paralegals, assistants, and just other lawyers. I mean, so many of us, especially solos, when we're at court, we're just talking about cases, bouncing off ideas. That's an example of, his support staff was his fiance. Yeah. He knew a lot.
And all these guys were like great in front of they all have the exception of my cousin Vinny, but Few Good Men and Time to Kill also had like these bookish female assistants who were not great in front of the jury, but were as smart, if not smarter, than the lead, basically running the show and basically holding them up. In the case of Few Good Men, literally when he gets drunk and when he thinks he's lost the case. But then you have in My Cousin Vinny, like if Mona Lisa Vita got her law degree, I would hire her before I hired Vinny. Yeah. And it's not a very hard decision. I would absolutely do that.
Yeah, no, I think she's really good. And then actually, interestingly, Marissa Tomei plays a prosecutor in The Lincoln Lawyer.
Really? Yeah. I've never seen The Lincoln Lawyer, so I'm
another Matthew McConaughey defense movie. So yeah, we can do that one at some point. We have to see it first.
Yeah, I have to see it. So I have homework now.
So those are three of the big hitters. I think we have to get into, now again, she's not yet a lawyer in her movie, but she tried a case and became a lawyer. Elle Woods.
Yeah.
Legally Blonde. What do you think of Elle Woods?
First off, I love that movie. I am unabashedly love that movie. I think when she is someone I would hire. And I've never seen the second one, and apparently there's a third one that like the actress got off of and was just like, I want no part of that. But I would totally hire her if I was in some sort of like probably white collar jam, because she's obviously like gotten in with this like big fancy firm, and I have every confidence she's probably like running the show by now, 15 years after the fact. And I feel like as an attorney, and I think as a trial lawyer, and you're a trial lawyer, so you can tell me if I'm sort of off the rails here, but like you get Daniel Kaffee, you get Jake Brigance. They're kind of like moral. They come at the trial from like a moral perspective, right? Particularly Jake. Elle Woods and Vinny Gambini are like men and women of the people, and they're just like, I'm just there figuring it out with you. We're just talking this through, and different personalities, but the same result. And I feel like they remind me of like from a Civil Action, Robert Duvall's character, whose name I forget, but who is also this like salt of the earth guy who listens to the Red Sox and like wears an old suit with cracked shoes in the courtroom and stuff like that. Like, it's two ways to do it, but I feel like she is maybe even the more effective version of Vinny Gambini because she's probably smarter than Vinny. She is smarter than Vinny.
Oh yeah.
Like Vinny's got kind of that EQ, but she's got EQ and IQ. So I like her. I like her. Yeah.
So I think Elle Woods would be great defending a sex crime.
What is that?
I think being a woman would help in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Vinny, I don't know. Do you want Vinny cross-examining someone who's accusing you of sexual assault?
No.
Maybe.
No.
I think Matthew McConaughey can pull it off. But I think I might go for Elle Woods there. I think she probably have a softer touch, but also a very sharp touch.
Yeah.
Because she's able to. I think she's better at reading people.
Yeah. And I feel like she has more than one gear. Like Vinny's Vinny, and Vinny doesn't stop being Vinny, and there's nothing else. It's just him. She has different gears. She has different ways to attack things, and I actually think she'd be really good as in a white collar setting too. Because if I wanted someone to explain a very complicated Ponzi scheme that perhaps I got entangled with to a jury, I feel like she would be the person to do it in a way that's relatable and beneficial. So, whereas Vinny would be Vinny, he would not be a good choice for like a Ponzi scheme defendant. But I feel like she would just have that like common touch that would be very effective.
I think Elle would be very good at selecting jurors.
Yes.
She seems like somebody who knows how to read people. Because again, she's able to read people by the way they're dressed, the way they wear their hair, the way they sound. Yeah. She's also very prepared. Vinny kind of prepared. Yeah. But Elle was, again, very studious, was definitely a good learner. Obviously, I mean, I forgot his name, but Luke Wilson's character was a good lawyer. She learned from him. She actually had some lawyers. She went I'm not a big Harvard fan, but she went to Harvard. That's a good school.
Spoken like
Kaffee
a
went to Harvard too, didn't he? He didn't go to the Brooklyn Academy of Law.
No, he didn't. No, Kaffee went to Harvard, and I'm sure Jake Brigance went to Ole Miss because all of John Grisham's characters went to Ole Miss.
He must have gone to Ole Miss.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I think.
No. Not only did John Grisham go to Ole Miss, he lives in Oxford, Mississippi.
Right. Although I think Mitch McDear from The Firm went to Harvard, didn't he?
Oh yeah, that's right. He might have. Yeah.
So. Yeah. Now, again, we're not going to talk about Mitch McDear because he doesn't try a case in the movie, so he's not part of our discussion.
No. And that's just a weird movie, and I haven't seen that in ages and ages, and I'm okay. I'm good.
Yeah. Just as, again, a lot of other good Grisham characters. I mean, also in the up-and-comer category is Rudy Baylor, played by Matt Damon in The Rainmaker, but not a criminal case. So
no. And also another instance where he had a backup person in Danny DeVito, whose character I don't remember, who was not a barred lawyer, but just knew all the ins and outs and knew how to make things happen and knew the questions to ask and the things to do, so that Matt Damon could shine in court. So an interesting parallel.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you need to try a case, you go with the lawyer. But if you need to settle a case, especially if it's kind of a dicey slip and fall rear ender, I think you go for Danny DeVito, his character, or Vinny. I think Vinny would be great at settling cases with insurance companies.
Oh yeah, no. If I was rear ended, I would absolutely hire Vinny if I was in the state of New York, because he would just go in and he would know exactly the numbers to ask for. He would just have it all figured out, and I'd leave happy. He'd leave happy. It'd be great.
I'm sure Vinny would also have a good cater of chiropractors and doctors that give his clients good ratings.
He goes back to Brooklyn and has that thing wired in about 2 weeks after this Alabama thing.
Yeah. So yeah, no question. So now we'll go for probably, so we talked about the biggest modern movie lawyers, I think. But probably the most famous fictional lawyer, one that has actually been cited in Supreme Court decisions. We have to talk about Atticus Finch, who's both a literary as well as a cinematic character. Although I think when people think of Atticus Finch, they're really thinking about Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch, not Harper Lee's character.
Yeah.
And Atticus Finch, I'll tell you, I don't know how good he really is. What's your take on Atticus?
So I don't know that he's so I don't think necessarily he would be a great trial lawyer again. And realistically, was he that great of a trial lawyer in the movie? I actually think he's a guy who would be great not as in the trial context, but as like the counselor context. Because, and again, I'm thinking of Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch. He's got that very calm and cool, and everything's going to be okay, and I'm in control of my emotions kind of attitude. And the whole time, like the big lesson you learn from the book, if you read it in middle school or high school or college or whatever, is you have to like take time to walk in other people's shoes and think about what they're thinking. And if you're sitting across from someone in like a commercial negotiation, that's an incredibly powerful weapon, being able to say, I know what that guy needs. How can I get, how can we make this all work? So I feel like that's his true calling. So if I was hiring like a general counsel, I feel like the Gregory Peck version of Atticus Finch is a great choice. But like as a trial lawyer, I just don't. I feel like he just doesn't really have it for me.
Yeah, it's a tough call because I don't know who could have won the Tom Robinson trial. I mean, he was defending a black man in 1930s. Are they in Alabama? Or was there
Alabama? Yeah.
Okay. Accused of sexually assaulting a white woman, all white jury. I don't think many people. I mean, Jake Brigance might have been able to win that, but we don't know.
I don't think Jake Brigance is winning the trial either.
So I don't know who could have won that. But at the same time, we don't know how good he really was. I mean, Atticus Finch as an appellate advocate, I could see that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I could also see Atticus Finch as the walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. I could think he'd be a great plaintiff's attorney. Like going back to PI. If you have an injury case in the South, you probably go for Atticus. He can probably get you some big figures. But
I feel like he wouldn't advertise. He would think that was beneath him. And so I feel like he wouldn't advertise. So he would be a great plaintiff's lawyer for the 3 clients a year he got. And it would be enough to like keep the whole thing afloat. But he'd be like, why is anyone coming to me? Because no one knows he exists.
He's also, the other thing about Atticus Finch, he's in Macomb County. I mean, how big is that? How many defense lawyers are in Macomb County? He could just be the big fish in a small pond. That's
true. And I do agree with you that like, I think partially the point of that story is that no one could have won that trial. But I definitely think, I don't even think Jake Brigance wins that trial. Because his closing argument relies on the jury being able, where he says, he describes the underlying crime that causes Samuel L. Jackson's character to kill these guys, where his little girl is assaulted, and says, imagine that African-American little girl is white. And he's relying on some level of empathy from the jury. And I don't know that exists in the world of To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't think he can break through it. If he can't break through with that, I think he loses the trial in A Time to Kill. And so I don't even know if he wins To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, definitely Yeah, tough case for anybody.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing, and confined to the To Kill a Mockingbird universe, we know
Mhm.
that Atticus is well respected in his community, so he's probably pretty good.
Yeah.
But he's also, it wasn't like it is now where there are lots of lawyers. He might have been one of the
Hmm.
only few lawyers in that area. He probably was a very general practitioner. So people saw
Oh, totally.
Atticus because he did their will, he did their
Hmm.
closing, and he's probably really good at that stuff.
Yeah.
Again, so Atticus Finch definitely has integrity.
Yes.
So I think that if you're, again, unless you're like his client in To Kill a Mockingbird, if you're truly an innocent person, you're yourself an outstanding citizen, he'd probably be a good guy to go with because
Yeah.
he doesn't come across as being any kind of slickster the way
Hmm.
Vinny would.
Right.
Um, he also, despite being very educated and very professorial, he doesn't come across as arrogant the way Kaffee might.
Right.
So, yeah,
The Kaffee would never go to Macomb County, Alabama.
no,
On a
I
bet.
don't think so. But yeah, with Atticus Finch, I mean, someone that, again, was a good lawyer, but in terms of his trial skills, I just don't see enough evidence there to
No.
want to hire Atticus. Now,
No.
if you're in that community, probably, because I don't know how, Macomb County might be a place that doesn't like outsiders.
Oh yeah. You would never, if you were in Macomb County or somewhere, anywhere else, or whether it's Macomb County, Alabama, or up in Vermont or Maine, I wouldn't hire a criminal lawyer in Maine who was not a Mainer, or at least from like Eastern Mass, like Northern Mass. Just because I feel like people spot a phony and they spot a fake, and especially if they think you're like talking, if they think you're condescending or trying to big city them, folks from rural areas, it's gonna backfire.
Yeah, so let me just look up and find out. Do you know the name of the county in My Cousin Vinny?
Oh God, no! But it's something ridiculous, I
Let's take a look.
think.
Um,
Dear Google.
well, yeah, I mean, I kind of want to know this just because. Where does it take place? I mean, like, could My Cousin Vinny and To Kill a Mockingbird exist in the same fictional universe?
Oh, they absolutely could.
Right? Because they're both in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in real life it was in Jasper County. So right, like that's, but yeah, I mean, I don't think Vinny would be a 1930s Alabama probably would not have been very accommodating to Vincent Laguardia Gambini.
I mean, 1930s New York would not have been very accommodating for Vincent Laguardia Gambini, or whatever middle name he would have had, since I don't think Fiorello LaGuardia was mayor at that point.
So yeah, those are the big hitters in movies.
Mm-hmm.
Another great attorney who's not officially part of this discussion because he didn't do a criminal case, but Fred Gailey from Miracle on 34th Street, great movie lawyer.
Oh wow, right? that is yeah. He was. I tried to get my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, to watch that last Christmas, and she was like, "This is black and white. This is boring. I'm out of here." So no, it's true.
Not quite a criminal case because there's actually a civil commitment hearing, but he still had his so the stakes are really high in a death penalty case in Alabama, but I don't know of any stakes higher than saving Christmas.
No.
And that's what Fred did.
Yeah.
You know, he put the prosecutor or the city attorney's child on the stand. That was pretty good. Thinking up the idea to have the Postal Service deliver mail to the courtroom.
Oh, yeah.
Although actually the Postal Service might have come up with that idea. Actually, I think they came up with it and they told him.
Did they?
But he also benefited from a couple of things. He benefited from having a crooked political boss trying to rig the outcome.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He also had the Postal Service on his side. And he also had the magic of Santa on his side, which not everybody has.
No, that's very helpful.
But still, his trials were good.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of another movie that is also very high stakes, based on, and this was based on real events. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a movie called Denial.
I don't think
And
so.
it's based on a book called History on Trial, and it's by Deborah Lipstadt. And the gist of it is, Deborah Lipstadt is a real life history professor at Emory University in Atlanta. She specializes in Jewish studies, and she had gotten into it with David Irving, this well-known Holocaust denier. And she said something bad about him. I forget what she said. And he sued her in British courts for defamation, where the burden is shifted to the defendant to prove that what she said was true.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So what ended up happening, the way the complaint was structured, is she was put in a position where she essentially, because David Irving, again, big Holocaust denier, she had to prove in court that the Holocaust happened. And had she lost, the stakes were enormous. And so she's, again, this American professor, and she goes to England, and Tom Wilkinson plays her barrister, and he real life guy. The book's great. The movie's fine, good, it's worth it. I think it's on Netflix. The book's phenomenal by Deborah Lipstadt, but he plays her barrister, so he's the one who's good, who's wearing the wig and the robes, and he's going to trial, and he's just great. He's phenomenal, and he's this quirky British, very bookish guy, but he's this guy who, with this client, take on this incredible burden of proving that this happened, which, they end up, spoiler alert, they end up winning, and ends up not being close. And it's a phenomenal movie, and he just plays this phenomenal lawyer who's just like so British. Yeah, if you get 2 hours, watch the movie. If you get 4 hours, read the book. It's not a hard read, but it's definitely worth your time.
Yeah. So those are the biggest movie lawyers that I thought of. We both thought of. Again, we both agree that in terms of, we go with Jake Brigance. But the most famous, Atticus Finch is probably the most famous lawyer, but I think when people think of TV or movie lawyers, they actually think of Perry Mason.
Yeah.
Some interesting things, a few things about Perry Mason. Perry Mason was the character written by Earl Stanley Gardner. The books, I think, came out in the 30s, and the first movies were also made back then.
Right.
But Perry Mason is most famous for the 1950s and 60s TV series starring Raymond Burr. So, do you have HBO? Do you watch?
I do, yes.
HBO is reintroducing a new Perry Mason, either a series or a movie.
Oh, really?
Coming out, I think, in the summer. But it's set in the 30s or 40s. So it looks like it's more true to the book, or the books, because there's several of them. But yeah, Perry Mason, to I think everybody, is Raymond Burr.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So Perry Mason is a lawyer that won almost every case he tried on his little TV show. Except for, I think there were a couple episodes where he didn't win, but it turned out that his client really did it, or he was like something, whatever, got reversed. That sort of thing happened. And Perry Mason,
more appellate TV, riveting television.
Yeah. And Perry Mason episodes were known for, this is actually a real thing, the Perry Mason effects, where, as we know, and I think most people know, the burden in a criminal case is on the prosecution to prove a defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So the defense attorney doesn't have to show anything. We don't have to prove anything. Our clients don't have to testify. Most of the time they don't. A lot of times we don't put on defenses. We'll actually rest after the state's case. Some of us, it's because we don't want to send out subpoenas or prepare a case. But no, usually it's because we hold the state to its burden. But in Perry Mason, he would almost always find the real killer somehow. Yeah. So he'd be proving his client innocent, often during a preliminary hearing, not a jury trial. I think most of his shows were prelims in California. And usually the real person would be in the courtroom and would testify and would confess on the stand. So again, this is a universe where there wasn't a Fifth Amendment right, or they would judge.
Where they just forgot about it.
Yeah. So I have a couple of problems with Perry Mason. That being one of them. What if in one of these episodes, the real killer acted like a real killer and got the hell out of there?
He drove to New Mexico and lived in a shack in the desert for a year and a half.
so he's left. His client will be bound over for trial, and maybe he'd win the trial, but you just don't know. He relied too much on that tactic.
Yeah.
Now, one of the good things about Perry Mason seemed to work on one case at a time. Every episode of Perry Mason, someone comes into his office. He's never on the phone with anybody else. There are never any other clients. He goes to court with one thing. He's not juggling
right
work. So definitely there's a lot of time. But I also think that Perry Mason benefited by having an incompetent district attorney in his county. Hamilton Berger is probably one of the worst movie or TV prosecutors in history. I mean, I don't know if Hamilton Berger was the elected DA. Maybe he was just an assistant DA. But I would think that it would not be that hard to campaign against the district attorney in the next election in that county in California.
Why isn't Perry Mason running for DA? That's my question.
He's a defense attorney, It's like some of us would rather be on the defense side than the state side.
Yeah.
So I don't see a problem with that.
Well, I also feel like talking about Perry Mason and sort of veering this off the path for a moment, that I feel like movie or TV trial lawyers tend to present a more realistic view of life, that your sort of big hitting TV lawyers, Bobby Donnell, Jack McCoy, the big ones, they lose. They lose with some frequency. And I mean, Jack McCoy pleads cases out all the time. I mean, rarely, like twice a season, does he ever give a closing argument to a jury. So I feel like because you have that episodic nature, to tell one story and it's over, you're able to mix in things like a loss, like who cares if, oh no, Bobby Donnell lost this week, Jack McCoy lost this week. I feel like that allows for a more realistic view of the world. Now, like a TV show, a drama in the 1950s and 1960s, shockingly, the good guy always won, and it was always in very dramatic fashion at the last minute. But,
I'll tell you though, here's what's interesting. Back in the 50s, they viewed the good guy being the person who defended the innocent, who defended people's rights.
It's interesting.
And you still see that here and there. But compare the biggest legal TV show of the 50s and 60s was Perry Mason.
Right.
The biggest one of the 90s and 2000s was Law and Order.
Yeah.
So first of all, I know you did mention Bobby Donnell, The Practice.
Yeah.
I think Bobby Donnell is actually, I think Eugene from The Practice might be one of the best players of all time. But we're focusing mostly on movies today. But just wondering, I know you watched Law and Order, and I think this podcast would benefit from this fact. Years ago, I visited you in Washington, D.C. when you were out of college. It was before you went to law school. This was probably 2007? More like 07.
Yep.
And I was there for Memorial Day weekend and went to one of your friends' apartments to do the Law and Order Race to the Hospital drinking game.
Yes.
Where if there's drink for a cameo by a washed up movie actor.
Yeah, like a B movie actor or Broadway actor, because like that was just a pipeline for Broadway actors. Every time there's a black screen, every time like Lenny talked about his gambling problem or his ex-wife, or every time Benjamin Bratt's character gets hit on by a female witness, every time Green talks about his gambling problem. Because like, look, the movie was in like a Dick Wolf script machine. They just shoved in the New York Post for the last 2 weeks, and out came a script, and it was great. But yeah, it's definitely one of those shows that I still love it, and it's programmed on my DVR because I feel like you have in the cast, when it's the Lenny years, the Lenny and Green years, you have two guys who made as the cops, guys who made their bones on Broadway, because the guy who played Green was in the original Rent cast, and that's what really bolted him in stardom. And Lenny's like an old song and dance man. And I don't know.
Jerry Orbach was the father in Dirty Dancing. He played
Jerry Orbach. This I learned when I started Wikipedia. I don't know if you've watched The Irishman. It's totally off.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that. Okay.
Yeah. The scene where they set up the hit on the younger guy, the guy with the slick back hair and the sunglasses.
The one, yeah.
In that comment in the Copacabana that night, which really happened, Jerry Orbach was there as a guest of the guy who ended up getting shot.
Okay. And wasn't
it
Don Rickles?
Yeah, it was that's what I was trying to remember. It was the Don Rickles routine. And Jerry Orbach was there as a guest of the mafioso who got shot. So like Jerry Orbach and the guy who was like a leading grease in Rent, are the cops. You have Jack McCoy, who is, a stage actor of significant renown. And that's sort of the core of it. And then you have like Pat Thurston plays lieutenant and it forever and ever. And it's just like, it's the TV show. It's like a warm blanket. It'll be there. It'll be good. The person they arrest in the first 20 minutes didn't do it. Totally didn't do it. But they interviewed someone who did. It's usually the crazy parent or something like that. And it's great. And it's the only Law and Order that I like. It's fabulous. And the game is phenomenal.
I'm trying to think, there's a comedian, I think it's John Mulaney, but he says his favorite Law and Order trope is the busy New York City bartender that remembers everybody.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, I remember she came in here about 2 weeks ago with this tall guy. Yeah, I remember her.
And they happen to have like all the receipts just under the bar and ready for the police to just rifle through. And it's although there are a number of, so apparently Dick Wolf, at least when he did this show, he had a working law library at his writing office. And apparently, like, I don't know if it still is, but the law at the time was correct. I don't know if I doubt the case citations are right, but, and like they used bluebacks. And when I went and I'm barred in New York, and when I took the bar and we had our criminal procedure, Barbary lecture, they were talking about, okay, and then you serve the papers with this blue backing.
Yeah, the trifolded.
Like, you don't have to tell me about the bluebacks. I got that. I've watched a lot of Law and Order. We can just move on with that. Yeah. We can talk about Luds next if you want. I got that covered too.
So I know we talked mostly about defense attorneys, but seeing that we're on Law and Order, we'll just wrap up the show with favorite Law and Order prosecutor. All right.
So
I'm going to go with, this might be a controversial hot take. Actually, we're not going to include the elected DAs. So Adam Schiff.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, I think he was probably the best one.
There's an episode where he appears in court now.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, yeah. There's one.
In terms of line prosecutor, I'd probably have to go with Ben Stone, because I think he's more even-keeled. It seemed like Jack took a lot of things personally.
Mm-hmm.
Some very questionable things, like having fake show trials to entrap people. I don't know if that would fly in real life. What's your take? Who's your?
So first off, Ben Stone, the actor who played Ben Stone, after the show, he became like an Alex Jones type conspiracy theorist.
Oh, really?
Like Alex Jones 10 years before Alex Jones. So he had a short career after Law and Order, and apparently he left because he was difficult to work with. And I think that's what I've seen. And he went and became like proto Alex Jones. And I don't know if he's still doing it or not, but it's bananas. And I always thought it was just really, really crazy that he ends up becoming just a total whack job. Favorite. So I like Jack. I will say I like Jack. He does benefit from his assistant, from his sort of second chairs, who I think are, I think exclusively while he's there, female. But I think I forget her name for the life of me, but he's a blonde-haired one played by Elizabeth Rome. She's my favorite of his assistants, because I feel like
that's not Claire Kincaid, is it?
No. Claire Kincaid might be my favorite. I think I like Claire, and and Claire's my favorite because like they give her a backstory, and she doesn't just like disappear one day. And I think she's around for a long time. She has a much more buddy relationship with the cops than any of the later ADAs have. I feel like it's probably closer to real life. I mean, you can tell me, you know more than I do about that. I feel like that's probably closer to real life, but I feel like Claire is also the one that like balances him out the most. Yeah, that'd have to be my pick.
Yeah, I mean, again, Jack definitely a good lawyer, but I think a bit reckless. You know, and that's. I mean, as a defense
Well, he's
attorney, I don't
a
like the
true
fact.
believer.
Yeah, I mean, as a defense attorney, I don't think it's the state is. We can be creative. That's fine. I don't think the state should be creative with how they stretch the law to include to punish people.
Right.
And Jack would do like, oh, we could use this and charge it as a conspiracy. And
But I also think I think that's part of what makes that show good and not just hagiography is look, Jack's the white hat, Jack's, a hard charging son of a cop. But there are episodes where he goes too far, and there are episodes where he has to be reined in and where the court smacks him down or where it bites him in the butt and all those things. But I think he is a guy who they're not shy about showing him going too far ahead of himself. So I think, it's certainly, it's a Dick Wolf show. It's not going to be The Practice, which I think was, even though Laura Flynn Boyle was the prosecutor, and I think a character you liked, The Practice was a defense show.
Oh yeah.
And it romanticized, realistically or not, I don't know, but it did romanticize kind of the criminal defense lawyer, and which is, I think that was what made it so good and so interesting, is that it sort of took that different play on it and it did it really well.
Yeah, with again, The Practice is probably my favorite legal show because I mean, not that it's realistic, but it's more realistic than the other ones. Because over the course of The Practice, it starts out with them struggling. They lose cases, they can't pay their bills, and then they go on a roll and pick up some good ones.
And James Spader shows up, which I assume happens to everyone.
Yeah, right. And again, I thought Eugene was a good lawyer. I thought Eleanor, very good. What was Kelly Williams' character?
I forget her name.
Lindsay.
Lindsay, yes. Lindsay Green.
Yeah, so they were good lawyers. They had their flaws, but they actually try cases. They're not above pulling stunts in the courtroom.
Yeah. It is TV.
That was a good show. I mean, I would say that I probably watched all The Practice because it just happened to be on Hulu when Hulu was free years and years ago. I watched it. I realized, why didn't I watch this show when it was on? It's a good show. And there were a lot of other shows that didn't last. Like there hasn't been a good legal show in a while.
No. I would say I was a big fan of The Good Wife when it was on TV.
Oh yeah, so I never watched much of that. Crystal was really into that.
Yeah.
There's also the spin-off, The Good Fight. So that was a good show. But in terms of defense attorney shows, this hasn't been one like The Practice. There was the show The Defenders for a little while, but most of the recent defense shows have been kind of wacky, cartoony shows.
I think it's a hard genre to get right because you've had big hitters, you've had really good stuff done, and you either need a hook, which The Good Wife had. It had a really good premise. It was very smart because it did your sort of trial of the week, but then it also had sort of an underlying broader plot arc that was part of it. But I think to have just a straight Law and Order or The Practice kind of trial of the week, I feel like nowadays you gotta have something else. You have to have some other kind of hook, because otherwise, we've seen it. Yeah, guess what? The guy didn't do it, or he did it, and you're going to say something really fancy. So, I mean, there needs to be something else to get it to pop. I don't know what that is, but I feel like just a straight lawyer show these days is tough.
Yeah, so we'll see how the new Perry Mason is. I'll watch it.
Oh yeah.
Well, I guess one show we could talk about at some point. I'll have to do another episode. You watched The Night Of, right? The HBO
Yes.
miniseries. Yeah, we
Yes.
can do something
That
on
was
that.
excellent.
That was a good one. And there's some other ones that, the more I think about it, yeah, they're we could probably do. So we just did movies. We can probably do a whole TV division
Oh, totally.
another
Totally.
day. We can do Law and Order episodes, especially Law and Order, as well as SB versus SVU, the crossovers.
Yeah.
Into people like Alex Cadett. I mean, there's just a lot we can do with that. But yeah, that's who we hire. And in terms of, again, I think, again, you can't go wrong with any of these people. Again, Vinny, Kaffee, Elle Woods, Brigance. But that's our take. And then in terms of people I wouldn't want to go against, so the people who I'd hire, but in terms of people I wouldn't want to go against, I don't think I want to face off against Vinny.
Why is that?
Yeah, he's a guy that's really quick on his feet. Somebody that you really have to over prepare. Somebody like him. Elle Woods also very quick on her feet.
Yeah.
But people that didn't work, that didn't depend on luck.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I'd be good with Brigance because he can't pick a jury.
yeah,
He somehow landed with that terrible jury, and you're like, that's an important skill.
yeah. And one of the
I've
things
really developed that.
one of the things when it comes to jury selection, and again, assuming you're doing it honestly and not dishonestly, like every other Grisham movie, like The Rainmaker or literally Runaway Jury.
Yeah.
You're often stuck with the panel you're dealt.
Yeah.
I mean, you can deselect people. We can strike people. We can do 4 cause challenges. But Brigance was able to try the case he had with the jury he had.
Yeah.
And didn't have to rely on surprises and he tried a case. You can probably do it. And as a lawyer, I like those types of stories, the ones that are less, they're thrillers, but the focus is on the trial. And even though there's obviously a Hollywood license taken with it,
sure,
it's not someone crashes through at the last minute. Like that's the other thing back to Law and Order. Just as 20 minutes in, it's not the guy. There are some episodes where there are 3 minutes left in the episode, and you just know the defendant's going to turn up dead or something. Like, oh, all right.
Oh, yeah.
That's a wash. That was a.
Oh, yeah.
or the person confesses at the last minute. Like, oh, all right, they're going to sew this one up.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So that's it for today's episode of Legal Fiction. We'll come back another day and do this again because there's lots of fictional law. At some point, maybe we'll do non-trial attorneys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are actually quite a few of those.
Little room for us.
Right. Yeah, when somebody makes a movie about in-house counsel, I mean, could be.
They're fun. They're not always good.
Well, actually, I mean, Tom Hagen is probably the best in-house attorney, right?
Among them.
He only has one client.
Yeah, it's easy when you only have one client.
So, but anyway, yeah, thanks for coming on. Let's do
Thanks
this again sometime.
Absolutely.
And anyway, everybody else, thanks for listening. You could either watch this on YouTube or continue to download the podcast. We'll have more episodes coming out soon. Thanks again.